Steve Lindsay and I, one thing we both have in common, we were chiefs of the astronaut office. And I was a chief and then handed off the chief position to Steve. And we sort of started a tradition with that handoff. And kind of the final thing you do to hand over the chief position is I take Steve up on the shuttle training aircraft when we fly the weather for a landing. And we had a space shuttle airborne. We'd flown the launch weather together, so we got that passed down. But for landing, you have to go out and evaluate the weather, fly practice approaches, make sure the energy state is good so that effectively the shuttle can land safely. So we were down in Florida for that. We had flown a practice the night before. As a matter of fact, that next day, the space shuttle was coming back into land. So we had the afternoon off, and we went over to a good friend of ours we affectionately call Captain Fun, who lives on a lake, and he's got pretty much every toy known to mankind. So we spent some time water skiing in a slalom course, but then out front he has a motocross track. And he didn't have 2 motocross bikes, but he did have 2 four-wheelers. So we got on the four-wheelers, and as typically is the case, there's always a bit of competition.
Now back to a little bit of history here. So Rommel and I have been skiing together for many years in Houston, and I think we've done Florida before. It's Captain Fun, and we also rode motorcycles together. And so I knew that I had to be really careful with Rommel because he was very, very aggressive. I was very much by the rules rider. I was very careful. Didn't want to get hurt for flying. And Rommel was not quite that way. So I kind of went into this whole thing on the motocross track with a little trepidation. Continue.
So, thanks for that. So, as we're going around the track, Steve he's competitive. He is out front going fast.
Again, following all the rules, being very careful, trying to keep all 4 wheels on the ground except when they weren't.
But given his four-wheeler was a little slower, I decided to pass him, but he would not move over, and this track wasn't real wide.
To be clear, I had the right of way. And this jump that he's about to tell you about is only wide enough for 1 four-wheeler, not 2 four-wheelers, correct?
So it's wide enough for 2 if the lead one moves over just a little bit.
It's not true.
So turns out that was a straightaway where there was enough room to accelerate and come up alongside, but Steve here wasn't moving over, so when I went off the jump, the lip was kind of angled. So when we got into the air, my four-wheeler had kind of crossed up where it was pointed sideways. But while we're in the air, everything's fine because I'm flying straight, but I'm kind of pointed crooked. When we land, the 2 four-wheelers tapped.
Tapped?
Steve.
Did you say tapped?
Steve obviously wasn't hanging on very tight, and he fell off. He fell off his four-wheeler.
So let me explain what really happened here. So I had the right of way. I was following all of the rules, the proper motocross etiquette. Rommel comes up next to me, jumping where he shouldn't. He gets his four-wheeler basically sideways in the air. He might be going straight, but as soon as he lands, his front wheel hits my back wheel. We're probably doing 30, 35 miles an hour. And my four-wheeler immediately stops. I flip over the handlebars, am flying through the air at 30 miles an hour. I land on the ground and skid to a stop on my arms. And I look up and I see that my four-wheeler is now moving toward me, so I lay as flat as I can as it runs me over. That's what really happened.
So the truth is, I did see Steve fall off, and the dirt's really soft.
Yes.
Soft, brown, talky.
Yes.
Dirt, so I'm thinking he's fine. However, I've got to admit, when I did see his four-wheeler run over him, I got a bit concerned because if you get tangled up under there, it could snap a bone or something. So I immediately, safety first, shut my four-wheeler down, spun around, came back. Steve was getting up, brushing himself off. I said,
I remember you powering around that turn and continuing because you were also racing Captain Fun. That's how I remember.
I think I came right back and Steve's brushing off his arms, and I said, "Are you okay?" And he's moving everything right. He says, "Yeah, I'm fine." I said, "Okay."
So I did what you would normally do in this situation. I jumped back on the four-wheeler and continued racing. I mean riding carefully on the motocross track. So later that day, when we were done riding four-wheelers, I keep saying racing, you're influencing. And so I went into Captain Fun's house and I washed off, and when I washed off, I think all the skin was off both of my arms, and I just really messed up my arms. So we drive back to crew quarters, and I think we have to fly that night. So they're coming in that night.
I think it was that night.
So we had to fly in at T-38 that night and everything. And so, but I was pretty scraped up. So we got her to break into the flight medicine area and get me some bandages. We went out and flew and landed the shuttle.
Yeah.
So
It worked well. So with that, Steve now was qualified to be the chief of the astronaut office, and I don't think there were any other injuries after that, were there?
not as part of this story, no.